This is what the Chinese think about. So, in the Western business context, when you're going over there and you're negotiating some type of partnership or distributorship, or you want to license something in China, you're talking about a legal contract, but will be the outcome. But in Chinese culture, what the Chinese are trying to do is they're trying to figure out if we can develop that level of trust. Because if there's no trust, then the business will be very, very unrewarding. Everybody in China doesn't get off work at 5, 5:30. They all go out to dinner with their colleagues, their customers, distributors, because that's where the real trust and relationship will happen. Okay, so the contract in the Western culture, well, that's really the main point. And we believe that the contract is binding. So whatever's in the contract is what we go after. And we have this really litigious society. And that's why we have so many lawyers, right? Because half of us can't understand the contracts to begin with. But we have lawyers draft them. And then when there are disagreements, we have lawyers fight it out. So that's part of our economy, I guess. If we got rid of contracts, then we'd probably lose another small share of our economy. But in China, it's different. In China, the contract is just basically a summary of what we discussed. It's a snapshot of the relationship that we're trying to create. And nothing in the contract really means anything because things change. Right? We don't want to work to meet the terms defined in the contract. We want to work to create the maximum amount of success for both of us. So again, that is also the win-win mindset. Fairness depends on outcomes here. In Western culture, we're always talking about what we're entitled to. That's very strange. We're always thinking about, well, what are we entitled to? I bring this technology to the table. What does that entitle me when I allow you access to my technology? What does that entitle me when I make a $5 million investment to build a factory? That's what we think. What are we entitled to? Well, the Chinese really don't think about that. They think about the process and the procedure on how we're going to work together. And they don't think about the specifics on, well, if I don't reach this milestone, then I'm going to try to dissolve this relationship. They're thinking different. So this is something good. Try to figure out how it applies to your negotiations. The main thing is that here we're more individuals. A lot of individualism in Western culture. In Chinese culture, it's collectivism. Chinese is all about the big families, all the aunts, uncles, grandkids. They all live together. I mean, I don't do that here in Atlanta, but they all live together. Right? So it's how you succeed as a group. That's why we feel that China is so corrupt. Because everybody's trying to help somebody they know. Because somebody they know has a different level of guanxi. And that's why we think it's corrupt. But it's actually just people looking out for their own. And it's just natural. I think it's natural. In the era of globalization and all of this the digital age and digital economy, I think a lot of things have lost their personal connection. A lot of things have been, I can work with people for years with GoToMeeting, and I probably have never met them. I've never shared a lunch. I've never shared a real conversation. I just interact with them through cyberspace. And all of the personal dynamics of truly successful relationships have been taken out of the equation. And that's a shame in some regards. But when you work with Chinese people, you don't want to forget that it's really important to focus on the personal relationships. Okay, so you have this engine that makes China business run. Well, how is it lubricated? So the oil can is the face. It's basically my pride. Okay. If you cause me to lose face, you cause me to lose pride. Well, maybe in a Western context, I don't really care. But in a Chinese context, it's really, really important. I'll give you an example. There was something that happened, I think it was with Mercedes. And Mercedes did something when they first entered China. And it caused somebody, some government official or some local population to lose face. And it wasn't about money. Oh, it was a customer. There was a customer who bought a Mercedes.
Wasn't by useful payments?
No, had some glitch or some problem, and they took it back to the dealer, and the dealer kind of was insulted and insulted the guy. So what he did was the next day, he parked his car, brand new Mercedes, in front of the dealership, and had like 20 of his buddies with sledgehammers smash the car. This is a true story. It wasn't about the money. He was rich enough to buy a Mercedes, so he's already upper class in China, but he didn't get the respect that he wanted when he took his car back to the dealership. And so what he did was he took the car back. He didn't want to return. He just parked it in front of the dealership. 20 guys with sledgehammers. So I don't know if that would happen here, but it happens there. So the concept about face is you want to give and receive face, you want to preserve face, or you will lose your face, and you want to be very generous, or you may lose everything. So these are kind of what face is all about. I mean, this is all about your own personal pride, making other people feel empowered, making other people feel respected. I mean, I don't have to go through these in detail. I mean, it's just common human decency, I think, to make people feel like they're respected, even though, well, they didn't get an MBA from a Western university. They must be idiots. Well, I don't think we should have that in the back of our minds. We have to give them the respect of where they are and what they represent to the goals that you're trying to achieve. And basically, face is the cornerstone of all social interactions and behaviors in China. So it's very, very important. And that's why most people who go into China always have a guide, an intermediary who is fluent in the local language and the local culture to set up this relationship, to do a lot of the filtering. Organizations have face too. So the Mercedes example was, well, you disrespected me, so I want to try to cause Mercedes as an organization to do things. So I don't have the numbers or the statistics, but you kind of wonder how well Mercedes did for the 3 to 6 months after that incident. Countries have face. This is really important. Okay. You know, I was in China during the Olympics, Beijing Olympics, and the months and years leading up to the Olympics, and now we're in the months and weeks leading up to the World Expo in Shanghai. You know, Chinese people have a lot of national pride. Now, we say that's because that the media in China is controlled by the government. And there's no freedom of press and all that stuff. So we criticize all the things that are different. But if we look at the state of China, we have a lot of people in China who are very proud to be Chinese. And so you have to be very careful when you talk about China. You want to avoid too much agreement with Google's decision to pull out of China, for example. Okay? I mean, because trying to convince some Chinese person that Western values and freedoms are best is probably a mistake. Because your goal is to be in harmony with the people that you're working with, not try to get them to give up their Chinese citizenship. So think about what the end objective is, and think about what you're trying to accomplish when you start to internalize how you want to approach every interaction in China. Okay, so this is basically, again, face is about goodwill, it's about reciprocity, it's about this social credit that I talked about. You don't, and this, I encounter this a lot because I have to build up a lot of goodwill before I ask for favors. Because if I ask for too many favors and I haven't actually made any contributions of value myself, then I start to not get the type of response that I'm looking for. So at every opportunity when I'm working with anybody in China, whether it's the engineering manager or the quality person or the guy on the factory floor, I'm trying to build some trust and I'm trying